Helping Parents Heal is a nonprofit organization dedicated to assisting bereaved parents to become shining light parents by providing support and resources to aid in the healing process. We go a step beyond other groups by allowing the open discussion of spiritual experiences and evidence for the afterlife in a non-dogmatic way. Affiliate groups welcome everyone, regardless of religious or non-religious background, and allow for an open dialogue. Attendance today at the Helping Parents Heal meeting is voluntary, and we are here for the benefit of learning from and sharing with other parents whose child has passed away. It is understood that our discussions are intended to be confidential and not designed to replace traditional therapy or spiritual counseling. However, these Zoom meetings are very helpful to parents all around the world, and they are posted on YouTube so that affiliate members who are not able to attend live can also watch. Helping Parents Heal offers a wide variety of speakers to allow parents to be informed about the many possible ways to heal, to connect with their children, and to learn about the afterlife. The views expressed by our guests do not necessarily reflect those of Helping Parents Heal, and we ask that you take from their presentations whatever may benefit you personally.
Thank you so much, Kathy. And I just wanted to check to see, it looks like people are having trouble coming in. It looks like they're coming in big blocks of people. So I'm sure you can watch that while I read Rob's bio. And again, we're just so grateful that he's here. Rob Schwartz is a hypnotist who offers between lives soul regressions to help people heal and understand their life plan. In a BLSR, Between Lives Soul Regression, you can speak directly with the Council of Elders, wise, loving, and highly evolved beings who can tell you what you planned for your current lifetime and why, how well you're fulfilling your plan, and how you may better fulfill your plan. Rob's first book, Your Soul's Plan, discovering the real meaning of the life you planned before you were born, explores the pre-birth planning of physical illness, having disabled children, deafness, blindness, drug addiction, alcoholism, the death of a loved one, and accidents. His second book, Your Soul's Gift, the healing power of the life you planned before you were born, explores the pre-birth planning of spiritual awakening, miscarriage, abortion, suicide, caregiving, sexuality, adoption, having pets, poverty, mental illness, and other life challenges and experiences. Rob's books have been translated into 25 languages. He teaches internationally on the subject of pre-birth planning at such venues as the United Nations, Kripalu, 1440 Multiversity, and Hollyhock. For more information, visit Robert online at www.yoursoulsplan.com or write him directly at rob.schwartz@yoursoulsplan.com. I will go ahead and copy those and paste them into the chat box. And without any further ado, please join me in welcoming Rob Schwartz.
All right. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Kathy. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know if you realize it, but my internet went down and I missed the entire introduction from both of you, and it just happened to come back on right now. So, in fact, I was calling you on your cell phone. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to do the presentation, but
oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm so sorry. I see that you called, but I had my phone on silent. But welcome back.
Yeah, thank you. Hopefully it will hold up. Well, I'm very happy to be here. As Elizabeth knows, I'm a big supporter of Helping Parents Heal. I have a number of people who come to my workshops or who do private between lives regressions with me who have lost a child, and they're looking for some form of healing that incorporates spirituality. And I immediately send them to Helping Parents Heal. And they always report back that they're very happy that I did that. So I'm grateful that your organization exists. I think you're meeting a need that nobody else is meeting anywhere. I have a usual presentation that I go through, and I'm going to dispense with most of it, partly because I think some of you have heard it already, and partly because there's something more important that I want to get to. But for those who have not heard me talk before, let me just try to cover it very quickly. My story is that I was in the corporate world for a number of years. I have an MBA, and I was doing freelance marketing and communications, basically different forms of corporate writing, which I found to be very, very unfulfilling. And I had an existential crisis at the age of 40. I realized I couldn't keep doing that kind of work, but I didn't know what else I was supposed to do. And one thing led to another, and I ended up having a session with a medium, my first session ever with a medium. Right away, she said to me, "Your spirit guides are here." And I said, "What is a spirit guide?" I had never even heard the term before. And she explained what a spirit guide is. And then she said, "Your guides want to talk to you." And she started to channel them verbatim. And right out of the box, they said to me, "You planned your life, including your biggest challenges, before you were born." And of course, I said, "Well, why in the world would I do something like that?" Well, they had a pretty good answer. They had a lot of answers, actually. But what was most compelling about what they said was that they knew what all of my challenges had been without me telling them anything. So this gave them total credibility. I came out of that session with my mind blown wide open. And for the next few weeks, the effect that this perspective had on me was that it allowed me to review the course of my life and for the first time really see deeper meaning or deeper purpose in the challenging things that had happened. And for me, that was very healing. So I realized I was onto a concept that could bring a similar kind of healing to other people. And that was when I first started to think about writing a book on the subject. This was back in 2003. And then things started to happen. I had a spiritually transformative experience of divine unconditional love for every person I saw. And that experience showed me that we as souls are made literally from the energy of unconditional love. And then right on the heels of that, I was introduced to a woman who has the ability to go into trance and channel her own soul. So I spoke at length with her soul for about 15 hours. And her soul told me in detail how pre-birth planning works and why people plan big challenges for themselves before they're born. So the combination of those three things, the session with the medium, the experience of unconditional love for all people, and the conversation with this person's higher self, that pushed me out of the corporate world. And for about 6 months, I did nothing but read metaphysical and spiritual literature. And then after about 6 months of that, I came into contact with some mediums and channels who in one way or another could find out what somebody planned before they were born. And so I struck up a collaboration with them. And 3 years later, the book, well, at that time it was called Courageous Souls, but Courageous Souls came out. And then a couple of years after it came out, a publisher picked it up and renamed it Your Soul's Plan. And then a number of years after that, I came out with the second book, Your Soul's Gift. And then in April of this year, the third book, Your Soul's Love. So what I do in the books, if you haven't seen them, I talk with somebody about a particular challenge that they've gone through. And it's all the most common things we experience here on Earth. And then that person has 1, 2, or maybe 3 sessions with the mediums in which we ask Spirit, did this person plan this experience before he or she was born? And if so, why? Now that's the way I researched the first 2 books. In the third book that just came out, there's still the collaboration with mediums and channels, but I added to the research the between lives soul regressions that I do for private clients. So everybody who is in the third book has done a between lives regression. If you're not familiar with between lives work, what happens in a between lives soul regression, it's a very long session. It takes between 2 and 3 hours. We start with some preliminary steps that help the person to relax physically and mentally. And then I guide them into a past life. They experience 4 different scenes, usually 4 in the past life, the 4th of which is the death scene. They leave the body in the death scene in the past life and cross back over to the other side. When they get there, they're usually greeted by a spirit guide. The guide tells them why they were shown that past life and what they need to know about it. And then the guide takes them to a group of beings called the Council of Elders. These are the very wise, loving, and highly evolved beings who oversee reincarnation on Earth. And they know everything about everybody. They know everything about your pre-birth plan and everything about every past life you've had. So when the client or the interviewee for the book gets to the council, that is a potentially life-changing experience, because if it's for the person's highest good, the council will answer any question they ask. And a lot of people come out of that experience saying, I don't have any more questions about my life. They answered every question I've ever had. So it's really potentially a remarkable experience. That's basically, in a nutshell, the overview of who I am and how I came to do this kind of work. Now, a few months ago, when the new book, Your Soul's Love, was coming out, I contacted Elizabeth because there's a chapter in this book that I really want to let you all know about. And let me give you the background to the chapter. The chapter is called Interdimensional Parenting. And the way that I learned about this phenomenon, which I'll explain in a moment what it is, a number of years ago, the Spanish publisher of the Spanish translations of my books sent me to Mexico City to do some promotional interviews on radio and television. And one afternoon, the translator and I were riding from one interview to another in a taxi, just talking very nonchalantly about all kinds of different things. And all of a sudden, she says to me, I have a friend who is doing interdimensional parenting. And then she immediately went on to another subject without even explaining what that was or why she had mentioned it. So I interrupted her and I said, wait a minute, did you just say that you have a friend who is doing interdimensional parenting? And she said, yes. I said, what in the world is interdimensional parenting? She said, well, I have a friend whose husband was an adventure sports reporter on television. And he was covering some kind of extreme sporting event. He went up in an airplane. He was the passenger. Another person was the pilot. And they were performing some kind of, acrobatic maneuvers in the air. The plane crashed and both of them were killed. And he came to his wife in his spirit body shortly after he died. And he said to her, we planned this together before we were born, and I'm going to help you raise our son, Luca, who at that time, I believe was just a few months old. I am going to continue to be with you. I'm going to continue to be with him. I'm going to advise you from the spirit side about how to raise our child in a way that is for his highest good. Well, when she described this phenomenon to me, which I'd never heard of before, of course, I said, would your friend be willing to talk to me? She said, I don't know, but she asked. And then a few weeks later, I was on a Zoom call with, her name is Alexa. She's a German woman who married a Mexican man, and she and her son, Luca, live near Mexico City now. So she told me in detail how this is working. And her husband, whose name is Jorge, he is very, very active in raising their son. And of course, one of the questions I wanted to explore was, well, if he wanted to continue being active raising their child together, why do it from the other side? Why not just stay here and be in body? So I want to read you a couple of passages from this chapter. I think you will find this to be very interesting and very helpful. So not long after the plane crash in which Jorge was killed, Alexa had a session with a friend of hers who reads the Akashic Record. If you have not heard that term before, the Akashic Record is the complete non-physical record of every word, thought, and action relevant to the earth plane, including the pre-birth planning. So the friend who was reading the records started to hear from Jorge. Jorge made contact with her during the session, and she ended up translating an entire
Whoops, Rob, it seems like you have just frozen, unfortunately, right when we were talking about Akashic records. Don't worry. I have a feeling that you might be able to hear me and can't speak. I would suggest maybe logging out and then logging in again, because that might allow us to be able to hear you, or maybe logging in on your phone, because that sometimes has better coverage, because if you're having trouble with your internet. Let me go ahead. Oh, he went off. I will give him a call if I don't see him right away. I'm sure that's probably what he's going to try. I see that we have some questions, which is wonderful. And
am I back?
You're back. There you are. Yay. Okay, good. Go ahead.
Hopefully it will hold up.
Yeah.
So again, the person who was reading the Akashic record felt Jorge's presence, and Jorge dictated an entire letter through this person to his wife, Alexa. And this is what he said. Hello, loved one. I'm Jorge. I'm always here with you, and I'm very happy and relieved that you know I am. I am always present. Please don't stop communicating with me. Please believe in the fact that this interdimensional parenting is possible and actually happening. You know that, your soul knows it, you know this is happening. I had to, quote unquote, pass away so that you started believing in the existence of other realities. Believe in your intuition. Lucas' soul is very ancient and wise. We have to take care of him. I am always close to you. I communicate through telepathy in the day and also dreams at night. I never went away. You know it. Your soul knows. I appreciate and am profoundly thankful for your service, altruism, and the truths you express in your acts of love. You have to learn to believe without doubting yourself. In prior lives, you suffered a lot because of your abilities, but that time is over now and consciousness is opening up. You have to wake up and stay awake. You are doing it very well with Luca, very well. And this little one is our biggest teacher. He is of an ancient lineage full of
Oh dear. So we have Rob, who's muted again just a little bit. I'm sure he'll be back. This is so fascinating too, and I can't wait to hear more about it. But I do think that maybe it would be good to log on his phone. Okay, here you are, Rob. I think there's a lag in your internet connection, unfortunately. Oh, he logged out.
Am I back again?
There you are.
Yeah, so, you know, in my workshop, we do this exercise called the Divine Virtues that tells you the qualities you're working on in this lifetime. And one of them is acceptance, and another one is patience. So you have a great opportunity tonight to work on those virtues.
You are doing a great job too. And actually, we're able to pick up exactly where you are leaving off. Everyone's so interested in what you have to say. So keep going.
Okay, so Jorge continues in his letter. You are a soul in service, and we, Spirit, are thankful for your work. We know it's not easy, but you can do it. Remember that your soul decided all this would happen and that you have the strength and the love of your Son that makes it possible to go through this. You are going to do very well, my loved one. Love and don't look backward, because you are doing very well. Your book will come out. Many souls are waiting for it. You are very loved, my beautiful princess. So that's what Jorge said to Alexa from the other side. Now, part of what Alexa and I did to prepare this chapter, she had a session with one of the channels I work with. This particular channel, her name is Pamela Krabbe. She's in the Netherlands, and she channels Jesus. I know sometimes when I say to people that I'm going to read a channeling from Jesus, there's a little skepticism and they think, how could this possibly be Jesus? I'm not asking you to believe that. If that concept is hard for you to wrap your mind around, just think of the channel consciousness as a much older, much wiser brother in spirit. But this is what Jesus had to say. And let me find the passage here. So I asked him, beyond Alexa's personal reasons for planning to do this, why would a soul plan to engage in interdimensional parenting? Why would anybody who's here in a physical body with a child plan to lose their partner and then raise the child seemingly alone, but not actually alone because they're getting help from the partner on the other side? So Jesus says, quote, "The reasons for getting involved in interdimensional parenting are various, but I can name a few for the parents staying on Earth. Number one, to help your child. The deceased parent can offer a kind of guidance that is helpful because it comes from a larger perspective based on love, whereas much parenting on Earth is still based on fear and worry. Number two, to ease your own suffering, because it is very reassuring and comforting to still feel and sense your partner and be able to communicate together. The communication will not be there all the time, and you will doubt if it is true because you are human, but the flashes of love and information coming through can really help to ease your pain. Number three, to learn to trust your inner voice, to connect to the heart and go with your intuition. Number four, to reach out to another dimension of reality beyond Earth. As you do so, you become aware of your soul's reality and you open to a deep level of love and understanding, deeper than can be provided by the mind or by the often narrow beliefs of society. Number five, to become a bridge between this world and the world of the afterlife, and to develop your abilities as a channel and medium, which may be applied in other areas of your life, also helping other people with this ability. Number six, to enlarge awareness in society about the afterlife and soul-to-soul communication with deceased loved ones. So those are a few reasons that Jesus gave as to why somebody would plan an enormous, enormous challenge like this. I also want to share with you a story that Alexa shared with me that I think you'll find interesting. When her son Luca was, I think, about 4 years old, so this would be several years after Jorge died, he came to his mother and he said to her, "Mama, I'm going to draw a painting of everybody who lives in this house." So Alexa thought to herself, okay, he's going to draw himself, he's going to draw me, and he's going to draw the cats and the dogs. So Luca goes off for about an hour and he comes back an hour later with this drawing. And she looks at it and she says to him, "Well, Luca, I see you, I see myself, I see all of our cats and dogs, but in the middle, there's this oval-shaped being. He looks like an egg with little arms and little legs, and he's got a smiley face on him. Who or what is that?" And Luca said, "That's Papa." So Luca was seeing Jorge in the house, and he thought that he was living there just like everybody else. So just an interesting anecdote that shows that Jorge was active and present in Luca's life. That is the gist of what I wanted to share with you about this story. I don't know how many people in HBH have lost a child and their partner and are raising another child seemingly without the partner, but certainly there must be some. And if you know those people, please tell them about the interdimensional parenting chapter in Your Soul's Love. It's not a question of wanting to sell books. It's a matter of wanting to get this healing information to people. And that's why I wanted to speak to you about it tonight. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions you have.
Well, first of all, I just want to say that we do have a lot of grandparents who are bringing up kids. And so this whole idea of interdimensional parenting, I'm sure, is really fascinating to them. Also, there's a question that Sherry asked right away, and I just think this is so interesting. Is it possible to do the reverse, to continue to parent our children who have transitioned? Is that something that you've ever heard of?
That is a fabulous question, and I wish I could say I had thought of it myself, but I didn't think to ask that. But next time we do a channeling session, I will be asking about that.
That's just so interesting, because why not? It seems like that might be a possibility. Also, we have other questions too. This information is so interesting. We have one mom who says that after her mother passed in 2014, she had a medium tell her that her mom was spending most of her time reading the Akashic records. Does that make sense that they would spend so much time doing that? Does that to you seem reasonable? Oops, I think we've lost Rob, darn it. Okay, patience is a virtue. So let's all just send love to Rob. I know that he'll come back. It's funny because when these kinds of things happen, back in the way back, I used to worry about the fact that everybody would want to get off and just go their own separate way. But I figure that anybody who stays on is supposed to be here. And this is really a fascinating conversation anyway. I just feel so honored that Rob is on here with us.
Okay, I'm back once again.
You're back. Good. I was just telling everybody how happy everyone's being so patient. And of course, it's because what you're saying is so interesting. But let's see. We always have questions, and this isn't really related to the interdimensional parenting, but if you could just maybe say something about suicide and about suicide being in our soul's plan and your thoughts on that, it would be very helpful, just because we have so many of them in the chat box. Could you possibly address that for us, Rob?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. There's an entire chapter in my second book, Your Soul's Gift, about the pre-birth planning of suicide. The story in that chapter, the person I'm talking with is an American woman named Carolyn. She lost her only child, a son named Cameron, to suicide, actually just a few days after he graduated from high school. He had long suffered from extreme depression and anxiety. And a few days after he graduated from high school, at a time when she thought he was about to go off to college and start doing great and exciting things in the world, she came home and found that he had hung himself from a rafter in their attic. And she was the one who had to climb up and cut the rope and take Cameron's body down. She and I worked with the same channel I mentioned to you a moment ago, Pamela Crabet in the Netherlands. And in this channeling session, Pamela brought through Jesus and her son, Cameron. So toward the beginning of the channeling session, Jesus comes in, and I ask him, is suicide planned before we're born? He says it is never planned as a certainty, but it is planned as a possibility, a probability, or rarely a probability so high as to be almost certain. And then he says this was the case with Cameron. Cameron was bringing back into body unhealed energies from past lives for the purpose of healing them. And it was foreseen in his pre-birth planning session that he was doing this to such an extent that he would suffer from severe depression and anxiety, and that a suicide would be highly, highly likely. Now, you might well ask, why in the world would any soul plan that kind of a life? You have to keep in mind that some souls are very, for lack of a better word, ambitious. And if you don't complete what you came here to do, from your soul's perspective, there's no judgment about that. It is not looked at as a failure. your soul's reaction to that is simply a sense of incompletion. And then your soul will want to complete whatever it was in another lifetime. But there's no judgment, and it is not looked at as a failure in any way. So that was Cameron's plan. Then Jesus steps aside, and Cameron comes into the channeling session, and he talks in very poignant, moving terms to his mother about how much he loves her, how they've been meeting regularly. When she's asleep at night, she leaves her body, travels back to the other side in her astral body, and they have these very gut-wrenching conversations about what happened. The one thing he keeps saying to Carolyn, his mother, again and again, is, "You did not fail me. You are not responsible. Nobody failed me." And as I understand it, that is the single most common message people who have taken their lives say when they're contacted through mediums and channels. They always say, "Nobody failed me. Nobody else is responsible. This was my decision. I am fully responsible for it." Now, later in the channeling session, Cameron steps aside and Jesus comes back in. And I share with him a very simple story that had come my way as I was writing that chapter. And it's a true story about a brother and a sister named Dan and Denise. And the story is that Dan and Denise made plans to meet for dinner one night. And then shortly before they were supposed to meet for dinner, Denise called her brother Dan and canceled. Then during the time at which they would have been at dinner, Dan suicided. He took his life. So now his sister Denise blames herself for her brother Dan's death. She believes that if she just hadn't canceled their dinner plans, her brother would still be alive. So where I found this story is in a wonderful book that you may be interested in reading. It's called Conversations with Jerry and Other People I Thought Were Dead. It's by a woman named Irene Kendig. And what Irene does in this book is that she talks through a medium to her friend Jerry and other people she thought were dead. Well, in one of her conversations with Jerry, the subject of suicide comes up, and she shares with him the story about Dan and Denise that I shared with you just now. And then Jerry responds by saying, basically, that if a suicidal person has the slightest openness or willingness to change their mind, Spirit knows and Spirit stages an intervention. So the point that he's trying to make in talking to Irene is that Denise could not have done anything to prevent Dan's suicide, because if he had the slightest openness or willingness to change his mind, Spirit would know and Spirit would stage an intervention. So I shared this story about Dan and Denise with Jesus, and then I say to him, this story seems to imply that every suicide that could have been prevented was prevented. Is that true? Because if it is, this knowledge would do wonders to relieve the guilt and self-blame people feel at not preventing a suicide. And Jesus responds, quote, "Every suicide preventable by outside forces was indeed prevented." I'll say it again. Every suicide preventable by outside forces was indeed prevented. So what this means is that if you lost somebody you loved to suicide, there was literally nothing you could have done to prevent it. Because again, if that person had the slightest openness or willingness to change their mind, Spirit would know and Spirit would stage an intervention. So if you have lost somebody you love to suicide, I would invite you now, take any guilt or self-blame you may feel and set it down and step away from it, because there was literally nothing you could have done.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Rob. And I feel exactly the same way. We've got to step away from any of that guilt. And Allison is saying something that I guess maybe once a parent has read your book, they get this a little bit better. But it was something that was hard for me to wrap my head around for the first 2 years after Morgan transitioned. She's saying, I have a difficult time accepting that we would sign up for this overwhelming pain, that this is what we agreed to. Could you maybe address that, Rob?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. First, let me say, I totally understand that. And to some extent, I feel that way about my own life and the things that I've been through. Also, I want to say, I'm not trying to persuade you of anything. My work is an offering. It's not an attempt at persuasion. So I want all of you to know that I am not trying to persuade you to believe anything in particular. My understanding of why souls are willing to sign up for some really tragic things, there are several reasons for that. And they all involve the fact that your perspective from the other side when you plan a life is very different than your perspective once you're here in body. One of the main differences is that from the non-physical vantage point, you are very much aware that a lifetime is actually very brief. Now, when you're here in body, especially if you're suffering, it certainly doesn't seem that way, and it might seem interminable. But from the non-physical vantage point, you know that a lifetime is very brief. It's here and it's gone like a clap of thunder. A second main difference in perspective is that from the non-physical vantage point, you know that nobody is permanently harmed by anything that happens here. You may or may not know that when you're here in body, but you do know that from the other side when you're planning your life. And a third key difference in perspective is that from the non-physical vantage point, you're acutely aware of the fact that all of the wisdom and learning that comes out of a lifetime becomes part of you literally for all eternity. Again, when you're here in body, you may or may not be aware of that, but you are very much aware of that from the other side. So from that perspective, that a life is actually very brief, nobody is permanently harmed by anything that happens here, and yet the wisdom becomes part of you literally for all eternity. From that perspective, it actually does make sense that some souls, not all, but some would plan some very, very difficult experiences.
That's beautiful. I just want to really quickly say one thing, and that's that Candy has been noting that maybe all of these electronic problems that we're having are the kids. They always mess with electronics, which is probably the case. We've had this happen in other meetings. And as a matter of fact, we had Dr. Ann Clark on for Helping Parents Heal, Connecting with Spirit just last week. And she was muted for some very strange reason, and we couldn't figure, the people who were running the meeting couldn't figure it out. So I think the kids do have something to do with a lot of that. There's a question here, and I'd like to ask the question and then give an answer that one of the parents has already given. And I think it's so beautiful, but I'd love to hear your answer. Christy is saying, what about those who are murdered? How can that be in a soul's plan? And Carol is answering this. Christy, my son was murdered, and through a medium told me it happened during a time frame when he had permission to leave. Murder is not planned. Is this the way that you see it? Or could you maybe tell a little? I know these are questions that we get every time, and I know that they're just so important to so many parents, but maybe you could talk a little bit about murder and in terms of the soul's plan.
Well, I wish I could give you a detailed answer. I actually have not yet researched murder for any of my books. That's one of the things that I plan to look into for the next book, but I haven't gotten to it yet. My educated guess is that the vast majority of murders probably are unplanned free will decisions on the part of the murderer. But my understanding is also that nothing can come into a person's experience without it being allowed in vibrationally. So there has to be something going on there where it fits in with a larger plan. I also suspect, and I could turn out to be wrong about this, but I think there probably are a small number of murders that actually are part of a pre-birth plan. I don't know that as a fact, but I think that's probably the case. And if that is the case, I will want to find out why when I research it for the next book.
Well, we can't wait to hear what you have to say about that. Candy is saying, Christy and Carol, my daughter was murdered also. I have a complete knowing that it was her exit point. The method is not important. All methods of passing are painful. This is my opinion and not meant to lack compassion. Her murder was shattering and traumatizing to me. It still is. I have come to understand so much more that has brought me peace about her transition, which I think is just beautiful. I also, there are people who are asking about whether or not our kids, the infants who pass away, are they considered to be old souls? Do we know what their soul plans are? Is it to teach us a lesson here in life, or was it to teach them some type of lesson? Do you have any thoughts on that, Rob?
I know a little bit about that. What I've heard in channeling sessions and read in channeling transcripts is that sometimes there are souls that they're not really interested in having a full lifespan on Earth. Maybe they've never been here before. And so they just want to dip a toe in the water, so to speak. They want to be here very briefly to get a sense of what it's all about, but they don't plan to be here for an entire lifetime. And then the way that that plan fits in with the life plan of the parents are often working on something like deepening in compassion. And there are different ways you can do that. One of the most powerful, but also most painful ways you can do that is to have your heart broken open through some sort of tragic loss, like the death of a child. Now, I know that what I'm saying sounds very harsh and maybe even punitive, and I certainly don't intend for it to sound that way, nor is that the way the universe is set up. The universe is loving, and I know that beyond any shadow of doubt from the experience I had just walking down the street that day so many years ago, where I had that experience of myself as unconditional love. The fact of the matter is that you can learn quite powerfully through having your heart broken open through tragedy. And that might seem incomprehensible from the human perspective. But again, your perspective when you plan a life is very, very different. And you're taking a much broader, higher level perspective. And some souls feel that the pain is worth going through in order to accomplish the growth.
That's beautifully said. And I have two moms who are volunteering to be subjects that you could speak to about murder. And both of them are wonderful. One is Candy, one is Christy. So if you're interested in having anyone to be able to speak to about this, then let us know. Also, Blanca is asking about adoption. Your book speaks about adoption. Could you talk a little bit about adoption for us in terms of pre-birth planning or soul's plan?
Yeah, the adoption chapter is in the second book, Your Soul's Gift. There can be many reasons why somebody would want to be adopted or to be one of the adoptive parents. And we don't really have time to go into all of the reasons tonight. But what's most interesting to me when I researched that chapter, you might think, just looking at it from a surface level perspective, that if you're planning to be adopted by certain parents, that it might be difficult to arrange for that. From a human perspective, you would think, well, how would I arrange for that? My birth parents are going to give me up, and then the exact parents that I want to raise me are somehow going to find me. And what we were told very clearly in the channeling sessions was, this is not hard to arrange, and that's exactly how it works. It's all done by law of attraction and intention. And it may seem to be miraculous from the human perspective, but it's really not all that hard to arrange.
Wonderful. So Shelley's asking a question. I know you have a chapter on accidents. She's asking how accidents can be planned. So is that something that is a part of the soul planning then?
Yeah, accidents, I always put them in quotes because they are part of a soul plan. The story in that chapter is about a woman who is blown up in a bomb explosion. And while she's convalescing in the hospital, which took 2 years, she was lying in her hospital bed one day in a lot of pain when suddenly she heard this voice inside her head talking to her, a voice that was not her own. And it turns out that the force from the bomb explosion had opened up her psychic gifts. She had actually become clairaudient. So she's lying in the hospital bed one day in a lot of pain. And all of a sudden, this voice inside her head says to her, "You planned this." Well, of course, she said, "Why?" And then the voice, who was one of her guides, told her, and the guide said, "You wanted before you were born to have a lifetime as a gifted healer. And you knew pre-birth that if you could heal yourself from the devastating effects of this bomb explosion, you could then take all of that wisdom and knowledge about healing and turn it outward in service to others." Well, that's exactly what she went on to do. She had 10 reconstructive surgeries over a 2-year period, but when that was over, she went back to school. She got a PhD in speech language pathology, set up a private clinical practice, and at this point has healed literally thousands of people. She actually has the ability to go into a patient's brain energetically, meaning non-invasively, and restore language processing capability in people who have lost that due to stroke or accident. Her name is Christina. When I interviewed Christina for the book, she said 2 extraordinary things to me. One was, she said, "Rob, I have completely forgiven the person who planted that bomb." That in and of itself is a remarkable statement, given what she went through. But then she said something even more remarkable. She said, "Rob, I am deeply grateful to the person who planted that bomb." And when she says she's deeply grateful, she really and truly means it. This, to me, is one of the most amazing stories I've seen that shows what you can do with an awareness of your pre-birth plan. It didn't happen overnight. She had to really work with her understanding of her plan over a period of years. But she did that and got herself to a place of total forgiveness and then to a place of total gratitude. If she had not come into that understanding of her pre-birth plan, it's very possible she could have been angry, bitter, and resentful for the rest of her life. She might never have forgiven the bomber, never gotten to a place of gratitude, never seen anything good come out of the experience. And she might even have chosen a darker path than that. She might have devoted herself to tracking down the bomb.
Oh dear. We're losing Rob again, and this is so fascinating. But I know he'll come back. You guys are asking some very, very good questions in the chat box. I'm really grateful that you have been. And then also, I know that Candy and Christy are interested in possibly being a part of the upcoming research that he'll be doing for his new book and about murder. So that would be wonderful. But let's just see if he's able to come back on.
Am I back again?
You are, you're back on again, yes.
What was the last thing you heard?
Let's see. So you were talking about the pre-birth, let's see. Oh, I just have to say that those kids, please ask him if we can. Okay, so these kids are not stopping, interrupting the way that they are. But we were talking about the fact that you were describing the accident, the fact that she has learned so much from it, that she's been able to actually see it as a gift, and that it's something that that she is grateful for now, which is obviously incredible, but that she's been able to heal so many people because of that accident.
Yeah, so the point being that, you know, her story is unusual because it's a bomb explosion, but she herself is not that unusual. If she can get herself to a place of forgiveness and gratitude after what she went through, then all of us can do it no matter what we've gone through. You can all work with an awareness of your pre-birth plan to get to that place of forgiveness and then to that place of gratitude.
That's wonderful. We have another mom who's interested in participating in the study. I don't know if you need people to be able to be interviewed for your next book, but I know that there are a lot of parents who would love to be able to help you with that. And we only have a few minutes left. We have a lot of people asking about different aspects of, let's see, mistakes in surgery. Is that something that is part of a pre-birth planning? Maybe you could just say something about that. I guess that would fall under an accident as well. Is that right?
Yeah, that would be in the accident category. But again, it's accidents in quotation marks. So to me, anything that is really significant, like a mistake in a surgery, the more significant something is, the more likely it was taken into account in the pre-birth planning. Now, again, that doesn't mean that it was set in stone. There are very few things that are actually set in stone, but it almost certainly was discussed as a possibility or a probability.
And Megan is saying, in our plans, do we have multiple exit points that we can choose at different ages and see at the moment, or is there just one set exit point or transition? It sounds to me like you're saying that there's more than one that are possible.
Yeah, my understanding is that everybody has several exits. They're scattered at different points throughout the lifetime. And basically, you would take an exit point under one of two circumstances. The first being you have done everything you came here to do and learned everything you came here to learn, in which case it's just time to go home. Or the opposite, your soul has concluded that for some reason, you will not be able to do what you came to do, or you will not be able to learn what you came to learn. And then in that case, the soul is not interested in wasting time or energy. The incarnation would come to an end and you would start over again in another lifetime.
Beautiful. Mina is saying, and I think that this is something that I think everybody probably wonders, why would we plan to lose a child before we are born? What lessons are we learning? Thank you. And again, that was something that I struggled with for 2 years, but I now understand how much I've grown because my kids are working with me on the other side, just as even more than they probably would have been working with me here on Earth. And it's really hard, Mina. It's hard in the beginning to understand or to wrap our heads around this. And you definitely don't have to believe in soul planning, to be a part of the group or to heal or to anything else. But I truly believe now that my son he was predestined to transition on Mount Everest, or if it hadn't been there, it would have been on the I-10 going between Tucson and Phoenix. I know that Chelsea, my daughter, it was her destiny to transition at 2 days old as well. And I have been cracked open from both of those things happening. And I've seen this incredible light come into my life, which is the two of them and all of these other kids too, that are just absolutely amazing. I feel like we're the lucky ones because we know so much more than pretty much anyone who hasn't studied the afterlife, and who would even really study the afterlife unless they had this horrific reason to do so. And so anyway, Rob, we have 5 more minutes. Would you like to wrap up maybe? Is that okay?
Yeah, sure. I just wanted to say to the people,
and we just lost Rob. I'm sorry, Rob. Again, patience is a virtue, and these kids are really having fun tonight. I think that they're pushing all our buttons, right? And this is so important, what he's saying. Yeah, he can stay on longer, hopefully. Once he gets back on, hopefully he'll be able to, he'll be back, yes. Okay. So let's just wait for him to come back. And again, thank you all for being here. Let's see. So Patty's saying she's watched you many times. This is the best presentation so far. Yay, my arm is doing better. Yay. Well, I get this cast off next week, and then I get another one on, and it'll be fine. Thank you. I'm really peaceful with my very heavy cast on. I can't be anything but peaceful, but I hope he comes back. If he doesn't, it's not a problem. We will definitely invite him to come back. And again, he was speaking about his third book, which is a wonderful one that I hope all of you will be able to locate. He wanted to speak a little bit more about that book today, and then he decided to kind of talk more about his first two books. But let's see, I'm just checking to see if he's coming back on, because I would hate to sign off and have him arrive back in. You guys are all so sweet. Thank you for the healing vibes. I have felt so much healing being sent to me. You guys cannot imagine. This is the first time ever that I've had so much healing. It's just like right now, my ears are ringing. It's been wonderful. And plus,
like he's back.
Good.
Am I back?
You're back. Welcome back. So you were wrapping up and then cut out, and we're all just hanging on your last word that you said. So let us know.
I feel like I have to talk really fast before I get cut off again. I think the message I would just want to leave all of you with, and probably you know this already, it's my understanding that Earth is literally the most difficult planet in our universe on which to have an incarnation. So the fact that you're here in a body on planet Earth, that automatically places you among the most courageous beings in the entire universe. So this is my way of inviting you to acknowledge and honor yourself for the tremendous courage it takes to be here. A lot of beings know that there would be great value in incarnating on Earth and don't have the courage to come here, but you did. So honor yourself for that.
That's beautiful. Yes. And we do need to honor ourselves, because this is not an easy place to be, but we're learning tons of really important things while we're here. And Candy's saying 100% agree. We are rock stars, and we are, and our kids are even more so. They are, they're supporting us every step of the way. People are saying, thank you so much, Rob. That is beautiful, Rob. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. This has been wonderful. And we had a lot more of that. He is so right. Thank you so much, Rob. Please come back again. Thank you. Thank you. This was uplifting and very healing. Thank you so much. So I'd be happy to send you the chat box. I'd like to anyway, just in case you are interested in reaching out to the moms who are interested in being a part of your research. If you do need any people to speak to about your next book, and we truly appreciate you being here. And before we end, we always ask everyone to unmute themselves and say thank you and goodbye. And so
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So very much.
Thank you.
and
Thank
thank
you.
you all for being
Thank
here.
you.
So much.
Kathy,
Thank you.
for your help. And thank you, Rob. This was
God
wonderful.
bless.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Super.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye, everyone. Take
Bye.
care.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.